The night the city forgot him, the boy stood barefoot on a broken sidewalk, clutching a sack of torn plastic bottles like it was a treasure chest. The streetlights flickered above him, buses roared past, and people hurried by without seeing the thin child with dust on his face and hope burning quietly in his eyes. He was poor in every way the world measures poverty, yet inside his small chest lived a heart so rich that fate itself would one day be forced to notice. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us of our shared humanity, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. The boy's name was Ion, though very few people ever asked. He lived in a single-room shelter made of rusted tin sheets and cracked wood on the edge of the city, where the air smelled of smoke, damp soil, and forgotten dreams. His mother had died when he was too young to understand death, and his father followed a year later after an accident at a construction site where safety was a luxury and workers were replaceable. From that moment on, Ion belonged not to a family, but to the streets, to the mornings that began with hunger and the nights that ended with exhaustion. Every day he walked miles collecting scrap, old newspapers, plastic bottles, and anything that could be sold for a few coins. Those coins bought rice on good days, dry bread on bad ones, and silence when hunger grew too loud. Yet Ion was different from the other children on the streets, not because he was stronger or smarter, but because he noticed things others had learned to ignore. He noticed the old man struggling to cross the road and stopped traffic with raised hands that shook but never dropped. He noticed the stray dog limping near the market and saved half his bread to leave beside it. He noticed sadness in faces that wore expensive clothes and kindness in those who had nothing to give. Even when the world was cruel to him, he refused to be cruel back. It was as if his heart did not understand bitterness, only compassion. Every morning before sunrise, Ion washed his face at a public tap, straightened his torn shirt, and whispered a promise to himself that today he would do better than yesterday. He did not know what better meant in the grand sense, but to him it meant staying honest, staying kind, and staying alive. Sometimes he passed by a school on his way to the scrap yard, stopping for a few seconds to listen to the echo of lessons drifting through open windows. The sound of children reading aloud felt like music from another world, a world he believed existed for others but still respected deeply. He never begged outside that school. Something inside him said dignity mattered, even when you had nothing else. One afternoon, during the peak of summer when the heat pressed down like a heavy hand, Ion found a leather wallet lying near a crowded bus stop. It was thick, worn at the edges, and clearly belonged to someone who had lived a life very different from his own. His fingers trembled as he opened it and saw neatly arranged cash, cards, and an identity photo of a middle-aged man with tired eyes. For a moment, the noise of the city faded. In that wall, it was more money than Ion had seen in his entire life. It could buy food for weeks, clothes, maybe even a small fan for the suffocating nights. Hunger argued loudly in his stomach, but something else spoke louder in his chest. Ion sat down on the curb and waited. Minutes passed, then an hour. People came and went, buses arrived and left, and the sun slowly moved across the sky. Finally, a man returned, panic written across his face, patting his pockets again and again, as if hoping the wallet would magically reappear. Ion stood up, walked toward him, and held out the wallet with both hands. The man stared in disbelief, then relief flooded his face, followed by tears he tried to hide. He offered Ion money, more than enough to change his week, but the boy shook his head. He only smiled, a small, tired smile, and walked away before the man could say anything more. That moment did not change Ion's life overnight, but it changed something invisible around him, like the air shifting before rain. The man watched the boy disappear into the crowd, carrying nothing but his sack and his honesty, and something deep inside him cracked open. He had spent years chasing wealth, status, and comfort, yet a child with nothing had just taught him a lesson he had forgotten long ago. Life, however, did not soften immediately for Ion. Days grew harder, the scrap prices dropped, the weather turned cruel, and illness crept into his thin body. There were nights when he curled up under a bridge, shivering, listening to the echo of traffic above, wondering how long a heart could stay strong inside a body that kept breaking down. Still, even then, he shared what little he had. When a younger boy cried from hunger, Ion split his bread. When an elderly woman dropped her coins, he helped her pick them up and refused reward. Kindness for him was not a choice but a habit, like breathing. One evening, rain poured relentlessly, turning streets into rivers of mud and trash. Ion sought shelter near a closed shop, hugging his knees, coughing softly. He noticed a luxury car stalled nearby, its engine silent, hazard lights blinking helplessly. Inside sat the same man whose wallet he had returned weeks earlier, soaked, frustrated, and stranded. The man recognized Ion instantly. Without thinking, the boy stepped into the rain, helping push the heavy car with strength that surprised even him. Mud covered his legs, rain drenched his clothes, but he kept pushing until the engine finally came back to life. This time, when the man offered help, Ion did not run away. He was too tired, too sick, and too honest. The man insisted on taking him somewhere warm, somewhere safe. Ion hesitated, fear and hope wrestling inside him, but something in the man's eyes felt genuine. That night, for the first time in years, Ion slept on a clean bed, under a roof that did not leak, with food in his stomach and silence around him. He cried quietly into the pillow, not from sadness, but from relief his heart had been holding back for far too long. The man's name was Farid. He was wealthy, respected, and deeply lonely. His success had come at the cost of relationships, empathy, and peace. Meeting Ion forced him to confront a truth he had avoided. Money could build houses, but it could not build hearts. Over time, Farid helped Ion recover, enrolled him in school, and provided what every child deserves, not as charity, but as responsibility. Ion struggled at first, unfamiliar with routines, rules, and expectations, but his hunger for learning matched his hunger for kindness. He studied hard, not to become rich, but to become useful. Years passed. Ion grew taller, stronger, wiser. He never forgot the streets, the hunger, the cold nights. He volunteered at shelters, taught younger children to read, and reminded them that their circumstances did not define their worth. Farid watched with quiet pride as the boy he once met barefoot on a sidewalk grew into a young man whose presence warmed rooms without trying. Ion's heart remained his greatest asset, untouched by bitterness, strengthened by struggle. Near the end of this story, if it has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe. Stories like this survive because people like you choose compassion over indifference. One day, standing at the edge of the same city that once ignored him, Ion looked out at the crowded streets below. He did not see enemies or strangers. He saw stories, pain, hope, and potential. He understood now that being poor had never been his greatest hardship. Losing kindness would have been. His heart, once tested by hunger and loss, had become rich beyond measure. Before this story ends, we have one special request. Please comment below and tell us what kindness means to you, or share a moment when someone's small act changed your life. A poor boy's rich heart is not just a title. It is a reminder that the world is not saved by those who have the most, but by those who give the most of who they are. And sometimes the smallest hands carry the largest hearts.